Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, and today's episode is a great one. It's really been years in the making that I was connected with Tim Coakley, and the genesis of the connection was not Instagram. So surprise, surprise. I do have guests other than from Instagram. This one comes from a dear friend, Amy Coakley, who she and I had worked together years ago and have maintained a friendship since then. And Tim is her husband. And she's the proud wife of Tim, who is a seasoned, now retired high school football coach. He's a Christian husband, father. He's an author. His new book that's coming out is The 6 Pivots, How Leaders Build Teams That Last When the Imposter Voice Won't Quit. And when you hear the title of his book, and then you hear part of his story, you'll understand where that comes from. I've been battling the imposter syndrome my whole life, and I know that everybody does, and that's why this book is so relevant. The great thing about it is he simplifies what he learned and what he's continuing to learn, because just because you overcome the imposter syndrome once does not mean it's not going to come back again. And so he shares what those 6 pivots are, gives you some real basic information around that. So if you've battled the imposter syndrome at all, you're going to want to listen to this episode. You're going to want to grab a piece of paper and a pen and write things down. If you're driving, just wait. But just pause it when you need to, because there are so many gems in here. And I would say is if you're in a position, if you happen to be a business leader, if you happen to be a coach, you should reach out to Tim. I know he would talk to you, but you may want to even bring him in to help mentor and foster, because he does have the resume of success. And when you hear about how he achieved that success, you may be shocked. It doesn't surprise me, but it may surprise you because it goes against the norm of what the world's telling you. So I'm not going to give you any more than that, but I know that you're going to enjoy this episode. I got a lot out of it. We're on a run with guests, and this one's just another one. Tim, this was fantastic. So without further ado, Tim Coakley. Okay, here we go. Tim Coakley, so glad to finally see you. We've communicated a little bit, and then I know your dear wife. We go back a long way, so I'm glad we finally got connected here today.
Yeah, and I'm certain I've heard more about you than you have me, because she actually liked you and you were her boss.
Well, she made it easy. She was wonderful, and it was such a great time to be able to spend with her, and I'm glad that we've stayed in touch, because I mean, I remember her kids when they were little, and now they're like graduating college, and it's just all kinds of stuff as time just, you blink and it goes by.
No doubt.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I'm glad you're not a normal Instagram guest that I normally have. I usually find most of my guests through Instagram, but this is a great connection, and it's something that I know that I'm going to benefit from. And so before we get into who you are and what you do, is I like to warm everything up with a game called Would You Rather. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So would you rather have a team filled with top talent or a team built on resilience?
Resilience for sure. You know,
why so?
Perseverance. In my book, I wrote a book, The 6 Pivots, and the third pivot is perseverance. And it's not complicated. Perseverance is just toughness over a length of time. So you can be tough, you can be resilient, my opinion, and still not get there. What gets you there is to sustain that over a season, over a life, over a career. Perseverance, which is a graduated part of what you asked, which is of resilience.
And we'll get into this more, but while we're on this topic, do you feel that most people are born with resilience or perseverance, or is it a skill that they can develop?
I think if they were born with perseverance, I'd have been a banker. I think teams have to be put in tough situations I think life puts people in tough situations naturally because, the first line to the road less traveled. Life's hard. But when you get into team sports, I think it's the coach's job to really stretch the team and really get them into an environment where they survive and they persevere because it's going to be so important they hold that when they're older. So, yeah, I like the resilience part and I like the perseverance part as far as a team goes.
That's great. Okay. Number two, would you rather make a difficult decision everyone questions or avoid conflict to keep everyone happy?
And when I was a first year coach, I would have avoided conflicts. But as I got through it, I realized, no matter what we do or say, there's going to be a section that doesn't like us. So I'd rather give you the difficult decision, the difficult choice right now, because then we can adapt and we'll both know where we stand.
And I'm glad how you phrased it at the beginning. You would have made you would have made the decisions, and we all get into that position of, okay, how do I make everybody happy? And then you quickly realize, like you said, is it's not going to work. And as a parent, when you're a new parent, you're trying to figure out everything that you need to do, and then you realize, nope, I have to have set boundaries. I have to do things that I need to do, and it's so important that we all realize that in the real world, the importance of having standards, knowing what you're going to live by, and then having to stick with those whether people like it or not. And I laughed when I was reading that question because as a head football coach, I knew what your answer was most likely going to be because everybody second guesses. So how did you navigate people being armchair quarterbacks all the time?
I think it goes back to what I wrote my book about. I have a unique story. I never played football. And when you tell somebody that, and even me, I felt it was a disqualifier. So early in my career, I wrote this book, The Six Pivots, and it says early in my career, I would take that imposter. I called it the imposter syndrome, which I'll talk about later. And I thought, okay, I've got to prove I belong. And so I was just beating the imposter over the head with effort, effort, effort. So for me, that was what it was. That was, where I really drew the line. That's where I became a head coach was through having to fight my way there in my mind. And then at the end, it really wasn't about that. And I'll talk about that transition when it went from me focused to them focused. I felt the imposter left. So for me, particularly, the difficulty was trying to prove I belong until I realized this really isn't about that. It's trying to help others get to where they want to go and help them rise. I help others rise, help myself rise by helping others rise.
Oh man, I can't wait to get into it because that what you shared is so pivotal in the fact that you bring a fresh approach. You didn't bring this is the way it's always been done and the way I've always done it. You brought this new perspective, which is fantastic. Okay, I don't want to get into it and get ahead of ourselves because I know I want to get into the six pivots for sure. Number three, would you rather feel called or qualified?
Called, called because I am. I had a youth pastor that looked me right in the eyes and he said that he loved me. I've carried that my whole life. He looked right at me and said, I love you. And then I had a passion, a deep passion for football. I wanted to be Tom Landry. So still feel called. And I thought it was my purpose. I never had to feel like a job. I loved coaching, would have done it for free. So much rather been called by a mile.
Isn't it? It's a beautiful memory that you shared about that those simple words that somebody just gave you in that moment was genuine and sincere and changed the trajectory of your life. I mean, it gave you purpose.
Yeah, and I coached in the inner city for 16 years. So not only was I dealing with first time college students, dysfunctional houses, but I was dealing with a bunch of young men who had never been told they were loved. And we would look right at them. So this is the first time a grown man would look them right in the eye and say, I love you. And that came from when I was impacted by somebody telling me that. So, yes, it's been glorious, honestly.
That's great. Okay, the last one may be the most controversial. Would you rather have pizza or tacos?
Pizza. I'm a pizza guy. So, since you're a gator, you're probably a taco guy, right?
No, I love pizza. I
Pizza,
like them both, and that's the controversy that I have. But if I had to pick one, it would be pizza, hands down.
hands
Do
down.
you have a favorite order?
The Hawaiian pizza, pepperoni and pineapple all day.
See, there you go. And I'm in the pineapple camp. Like I enjoy pineapple, but it can be a house divided type position if you want to plant your flag in the pineapple on pizza.
I don't plant many flags at home.
No, no. My dad always said is that you always have the last word, and it's yes, dear. So,
Right.
well, Tim, thank you for answering that and playing along. It's a good warm up. That you, as you know, in football, you got to have your warm up so you get ready for the real thing. So I started Pathways to Greatness about 3 years ago. And I did it for the purpose of bringing people like you on to share your story, your message of resilience, to prove that, A, nobody's path to greatness is linear. I haven't had anybody say it's been a straight line from A to B and it was all, straight up all the way. It's twists and turns, rocks and switchbacks and all different types of things that are along their path to greatness. And everybody has a slightly different definition of greatness. And ultimately, I just want people to learn how to not quit. I want them to be resilient, as you said, persevere, and just push on through all the tough times that we're going to incur. Like you said, is that life is hard. So, with all that being said, what would you say your definition of greatness is?
I think it's what I define winning as, which is the total release of your best effort. If you go back and study like these new books that are out, Simon Sinek wrote a book about the infinite game, and what he says is, we've gotten away from teaching competing and we teach winning. And what he was talking about was on the scoreboard. But for me, winning is this total release of your best effort, my definition. And I think that infuses young people. Now, for me, honestly, when I became a head coach, I began fighting that imposter syndrome. It was just about winning. I never abused anybody. I never used anybody, but I was up at 4:30 at the office at 5 because I wanted to win on the scoreboard. The transition for me didn't come until over time when I learned that people didn't really care if I had the imposter syndrome. They didn't really care if I played. They cared if I cared. And that was the difference for me. So I think that is the distinguishing factor in my career is when the transition happened. People, you can win without fighting an imposter. You can win with fighting an imposter. But for most, the adversity that comes, and in my book, the 5th chapter is about adversity. It's going to come, and it's going to come in waves. And you really need to be grounded. I need to be grounded when it does so that I can thrive and I can survive and get on to the next part. But yes, 20% of my book, adversity.
I love it. And when you were sharing that, I thought of reading. I'm a huge fan of John Wooden, and he talked about all the championship teams, but his favorite team is the team that had the worst record because they were
Right.
not the most talented, but they worked the absolute hardest. They did the X's and O's as he had coached. He knew that they were going to go out there and perform. And that's all he asked for. He's like, regardless of what the record shows, these young men did more than anybody thought that they could because they followed the process. They played hard. They came together as a team. And that's who he's most proud of.
Yeah, and I have a quote by him that I used when we started winning. We had really good players. I have the distinction of being the only coach in the country in the history of high school football. And again, I don't like talking about me, but I had the number 9 pick and the number 19 pick in the first round of the 2004 NFL draft. First round. And so when people would come, when we won 23 straight playoff games, and they would come and say, "Yeah, but look who you got. You got this guy. He's going to the NFL. This guy, he's." And I would say this John Wooden quote, and he said this. He said, "We do. We have really great players, and we won, comma, and we won. Sometimes the better the player, the more difficult the situation." So your connection to John Wooden is a quote that I've used for a long time. And yes, obviously it wasn't me, but yes, we had a bunch of D1 guys, and we won.
Yeah, and that's a great acknowledgement that talent isn't everything. It's all about the willingness to be coached, the willingness to participate as a team member, because it's not all about you. And that's the challenge that you see with young athletes now is it's the slapping of the chest, it's the pointing to the name on the back of the jersey, and it's how do I get a highlight in order to stand out on Instagram and get more likes versus how do I just participate, do my job, and then see other people win.
Yeah, there's a difference between I'm number one and we're number one. And as a coach, we wanted to be number one. And when individuals wanted to be number one, it didn't work out well. And I've been on every side of that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Tim, I appreciate you sharing that because now my wheels are turning, and again, we're both John Wooden fans, John Maxwell fans, and so it's all about servant leadership and how do we help. And so I want to go back and have you share a little bit more about who you are, but I'll introduce you. Everybody, this is Tim Coakley. He's a Christian, husband, father. He's a coach, an author of The Six Pivots, How Leaders Build Teams That Last When the Imposter Voice Won't Quit. He's got a documentary coming out, Triumph. He's a speaker. He's everything. And it's great because he has the resume that supports all of this because there's so many people that go through courses and do things that, as you said, may not have the resume. And when you look at his resume, as he shared about never even had played and then having a very good career as a high school football coach, that just shows that you can do anything that you put your mind to and that you really set your path towards. So, Tim, I'd like you to introduce yourself and what you'd like to share with the audience, and then we'll get into the six pivots.
Okay, so you know how there's this gap, especially now between leaders who are ready and leaders who are responsible for people. I lived in that gap. And to me, it was the imposter. So when I started coaching, I had this imposter on my shoulder and I lived in this gap. And so, it's been around the quote, the imposter syndrome, that's been around since the 70s. The American Psychological Association says 70% of adults deal with some version of this. It could be the manager at the local restaurant. And so I tried their 5-step program, okay, to get rid of him. So I started coaching and we had success early. We had really good players. And I was fighting this imposter and we won for the first 3 or 4 years and we won at a high level. We won championships at a high level. And I kept reading these things that are out there that this is what you do. This is what you do to feel you belonged. And in the end, that wasn't it for me because I think what I'm saying is something completely unique. I have not found it anywhere. And that is for me, when the imposter started to leave was when I stopped trying to prove I belonged and started working for those people that work for me. So instead of me trying to prove I belong, I thought, you know what? These guys that are working for me, I'm going to get them to where they want to go. And the anecdote is this. It happened like my year 4 when I was really confronted with this. My best assistant came in, looked right at me and said, I want to be a head coach. I said, well, it's not going to be here. You're not getting this job. But I went home thinking, if I really promote this guy, I mean, it's hard to find coaches in high school. You know that. I thought if I really try to help this guy get a head coaching job, and this guy, I was just wringing my hands over it. And I prayed about it. I finally said, you know what? I'm going to do what's right because I really wanted him to get a head coaching job. That changed everything for me. That made the imposter leave. I will tell you with great humility that I had 15 guys become head coaches. And those relationships with me right now, I got them in the NFL. I got them in college. Most of it would not exist had I not made the change. And so the message that I wrote in the 6 pivots is about, look, this is how it happened to me, but you don't have to wait until you're 10 years into your career. You can start lifting others. And to me, it wasn't about that would make us win more or less. It was about, that's where I received fulfillment. There was no fulfillment in me being self-driven. What fulfillment came when I became others-driven, both players and coaches. So that's the synopsis of the 6 pivots, and great stories. I tell stories in there about. I guess I'll give one story before you go to your next question because you'll think this is hilarious because I do. So, our first year we went to the state championship game and lost, and the imposter told me we would never get back there. Well, we went it my second year. And so they invited me to speak at the University of Florida. And so the coaching clinics have changed a lot, but back then there were hundreds of football coaches, and Florida was at its apex. Coach Spurrier was there; they were national champs. The place was packed. So he was going to speak at 1, and I was going to speak at 2. So the event organizer came up to me and said, "Hey, Coach, I can ask you a favor. Coach Spurrier's on the hole number 15, and he's going to be a little bit late. Would you mind? Would you mind taking the 1 o'clock spot?" I said, "Sure, whatever." So he takes me up to the podium. Place is packed. He says, "Gentlemen, we have a little bit of a schedule change. Coach Coakley's going to speak at 1, and Coach Spurrier's going to go at 2. And here's Coach Coakley." And in mass, they all got up and walked out. they left the room. There was only like 50 guys left, and but it was still awesome. It's a great story. But yeah, that things like that, and my staff was sitting on the front row, so it was instant humility. But yeah, really, it's just about helping them rise, and honestly, a sense of humor. I mean, being able to get through things like that and seeing the funny part of it. But certainly blessed to have ever gone there and seeing Coach Spurrier, but speaking by him was amazing.
Well, in that situation, when you were talking about imposter syndrome, holy smokes, is that going to
Right.
reinforce that challenge and that voice on that shoulder of like, see, I told you
Yep.
that nobody wanted to listen to you. And it's to me, I look at those instances and I feel that that's spiritual warfare in the sense that
Right.
it's the evil one trying to keep you from your purpose. The episode before, we talked a little bit about this as well, about how people just are fearful to put themselves out there. And the devil doesn't have to be mean and create disaster in your life. His goal is to keep you from your purpose and to help other people. And so the imposter syndrome is just that. It's the voice that tells you you're not good enough. And I'm sure as much work as you did you have some of those same feelings when you were going to sit down and write a book?
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's very insightful. It's not just in football. When we're coaching football, for me, it was so now you get into becoming an author, okay, and no clue of what I'm doing, but I had all that evidence, and so I would encourage people. I want to give a call to action before this is over, and I would encourage people to really evaluate. Evaluate, who you listen to. Obviously, the basis of my life is the Bible. It's my foundation for my morality. But who do you listen to? And if that imposter is whispering to you, take account. Not just because you can read my book. I'm not going to make a lot of money, probably on writing a book, but I really want to help. I want to come alongside people that are in the position that I was in, because if they do read through those 5 steps, which are good steps, I went through them, and it says, think about this. Tell yourself you believe it. Tell yourself you're worthy. I believe in that. But that didn't get it for me. What got it for me was just completely letting go, having these assistant coaches who I needed badly, and say, "Here, let me help you work on your resume because I want to help you get where you want to go." Changed my life, and it changed the way the imposter spoke to me, and it changed the way I felt. They knew that I didn't play. That wasn't the insidious part of it. The fact was, I was the one being tortured. Okay, I was the one living through it, not them. They had to live through some of the decisions that I made because I was listening to the imposter. One year at football camp, when you have 2-a-days, I thought, Lord, everybody has 2-a-days. Here I am. I've never played football before, so we're going to have 5-a-days. Five-a-days. Well, the second night, a couple of my assistants came walking in and their faces were down. And I just knew they were going to say, "Coach, you're killing the guys. You didn't play. You can't have 5 practices in one day." But they didn't say that. They said, "Coach, you're killing the coaches. We can't do this. The kids are okay. We can't do 5 in a day." So there's evidence that I listened to the wrong imposter. And until I really had that solid belief and that solid feeling that I'm going to help my guys get to where they want to go, and my players. If it was going to be good for the play, I had the best quarterback I ever had that signed with Florida. Week 8 of the season, he's running up the middle, an unbelievable player, and he tore his ACL. We didn't know it at the time, but they took him to the sideline, and we're sitting there with the team doctor, And he says, "Hey, I'm going back in." I looked right at him and I said what I believed with my heart. Your future is more important than our present. You're not going in. Had I not been living for him, had I been living for me, I'd have put him back in. Because since I came into the profession with a totally new perspective, the old guard and the way we did it, I could have cared less. I wanted to win, but that kid wasn't, and I didn't know at the time he'd torn his ACL. He was just saying my knee hurts. And I'm looking at the doctor and him. And so it's so much, there are so much freedom in letting go, but there also has to be so much trust in what God wants for you, because losing meant my family didn't eat. So, so it wasn't as easy as it sounds, but yeah, I mean, just that. And that's why I wrote about it in the Six Pivots, because I want people to have the tools to get through it like I did. And I don't want them to have to wait till year 8. We were standing on the steps with the governor. They invited us to the governor. I'm standing on the steps of the Capitol, hoping the governor person that brought us up there doesn't ask me where I played. I mean, it's crazy, And but God led through it, and like that quarterback, he's now a college coach. He's coaching in college, and he calls me. Would he have called me if I put it back in the game? Maybe, but he loves me that I didn't.
Well, like you said, is people don't know how much people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I
Right.
have to say that one slowly. And it's so true. And it's like your coaches is you get another level of respect, admiration, and commitment when they know Coach Coakley is teaching me and mentoring me to get my next job. So you're going to get more out of them, which makes your job easier. If you're allowing them to make decisions that a head coach would have to make as an assistant, it gives them that safety net of failing now while you're protected. So when you go somewhere else, you can do more. And it's just like being a parent is you have to know, okay, when do we put the bumper lanes up to cover the gutters and when do you bring them down? And it's like once you see them bumping enough and they're not bumping as much as they used to, then you can drop the bumpers in the gutter and just let them bowl freely.
That's a great analogy, and you know I felt that myself, and I just didn't want to transfer my insecurity to the people that were working for me. It's really simple, but everybody talks about culture, and I wrote about culture in my book, and to me, for us, okay, the culture became right when I shifted because my first couple of years, I wouldn't let my coaches speak much because I was worried about what they would say. But when I finally made the transition and embraced their future, if I wasn't out on the practice field, our culture took care of what was going on the practice field. If I wasn't in a meeting, I didn't have to worry about it. And I didn't. I don't worry about it today. Hey, coach, don't you know one of your coaches is stabbing you in the back? He's probably not. The culture took care of it. So it, we get such a tainted view of culture because in college sports now, everybody sees these one and dones. And how can you develop culture that way? But for me, it was about being able to, like you said, it's about being able to release or to lower those guardrails and just let them go and let them coach. And honestly, like you said, they're going to work so much harder when it's theirs and so much harder when they have freedom. Now, there are some things you have to say, but that's a great analogy. And Jeff, I'm going to steal it. This is the pathway to greatness.
It's yours. You can have it. Nothing out of here is original. So it's perfectly okay. Well, Tim, I'd love for you to share with the audience what the 6 pivots are. And then please, I know that we don't have a ton of time to go through each one specifically, but share what the 6 pivots are and then just a thought on each one, because when I have these episodes, I want people, like you said before, is have a call to action, something that they can take away that regardless of what they need in their life, they can look at these 6 pivots and understand, okay, how do I apply them today?
Yeah, and I'll do it in a simple form. I hope people buy my book. That's not why I'm here. I hope they watch the documentary. To me, it's entertaining. I've been watching some of the trailers, but when I created the 6 pivots, I did them chronologically. The first 3 being effort, discipline, and perseverance, because effort's the entry fee to your dream. And like Pete Carroll, I stole this from Pete Carroll. He came to our school one time recruiting a player, and he said, "Coach, we coach effort first. And he still did that in the NFL. So effort, meaning, confidence doesn't come before action. We teach effort. That means that confidence will come after the action. So that was the foundation of effort in my book. Discipline is kind of twofold. And I describe it this way: there's corporate discipline or structure, and then there's individual discipline. I was a disciplined person, but somebody doesn't have to be on a podcast with me too long to realize I'm a macro guy, I'm an energy guy, I'm a future guy. So when it came to structure, number two, discipline, that's what took all my team because that was unnatural to me. But if I was really going to build this, I needed the effort and the structure, because with structure and no effort, you have no fire. Unacceptable in football. With effort and no structure, then you have no discipline. So the number three is perseverance, what you and I touched on earlier. So effort, discipline, and then perseverance. You're going to have to test yourself physically and mentally. Mental toughness always precedes physical toughness. So both of those are important. But what's most important is doing it over time. And I got that from Coach Fisher years ago because, he's a toughness guy. He's a tough coach. So it's 1, 2, 3, so that then you can do this. You can, number one, the last three are you can handle your relationships properly. I tell a story in there about one of my assistant coaches who passed away. He came in one time, looked me in the eyes, and said he had had a grudge against me for 4 years. And that changed me. It's still part of my life. He ended up passing away from cancer. But the relationships are everything. But for me, and for writing the 6 pivots, I had to have that foundation of effort, discipline, and perseverance so that my relationships, which is number 4, were right. Number 5, adversity, you and I just talked about. The bigger the dream you have for your team, your organization, or your life, that's the size of adversity that's going to match it. And if you're going through it, and if you're just fighting every day, think, I can't get through it, that means there's something great on the other side. And it's really important that we teach that. And then finally is your purpose. And since I am part of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team, the president there, Brian Boucher, gave me a great definition for purpose. And that is giving what I have to help others, giving the best of what I have to help or to encourage others. And so in purpose, for me, obviously it was coaching, but that's it. Just 6 simple things. It's an easy read. Like my mom read it when I was at her house over the weekend in California, and she said, "Hey Tim, this book's better than your first one." I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Because it's easy to read." So yeah, that's it. That's the 6 pivots, and they are a foundation for you and for your life and for your team.
That's great. And easy is good. I like easy. I like simple because it's not overly complicated. And in this world, we've seen, I'm sure you've seen offenses that are just, or defenses that are just insanely complicated. You know that they should work, but they're so hard for people to comprehend. And then, like you said, be consistent over time, that just going to the simple, blocking and tackling, just the simple things usually do well because you can repeat them perfectly because they're so easy to repeat. And so having these 6, and just to remind the audience, it's effort, discipline, perseverance, relationships, adversity, and purpose. And I want to go back to adversity. And one of the things that you shared is the bigger the dream, the bigger the adversity. And that's something that I know I haven't necessarily made the two connected, but I will moving forward. And I just want to bring that to people's attention, because if you're facing a lot of adversity, if you're in that, like what Coach Coakley had shared, is that understand that's directly tied to your big vision. That means you want more out of your life. So you're going to be challenged. So with that one, and since that one resonated so strongly with me, what are some things that you talk about in the book, or that you just believe in, to help people navigate that big dream, big adversity?
You certainly have to focus on him. So when I talk to people, I say, this isn't about Tim. This is about him. So I had an unfair advantage in that my eternity is secure. And regardless of what happened during the game, the post-game speech was the same. Losing is not fatal and winning is not eternal. Okay. It's just not. But I think the most important, you have to ground yourself in things disassociated from football. And for me, it was something called the Bible. When people see adversity, I think it's important to compartmentalize. And I'm going to make it through this day with my integrity intact. Often, almost always, when somebody faces something monumental, it's, I'm trying to do too much. I'm trying to look too far ahead. Let's just get through this now. God's preparing me. But I dealt with teenagers, so they weren't going to naturally think that. And I dealt with adults too. Now, I mean, I've been retired since 2021. And now with Tim Coakley Encounter, I travel and speak. I just speak to adults. But I had to hold their hand, because it was as hard on me almost when a senior would get hurt week two. If Deuce had got hurt week two and missed his whole senior year, it's so, the pain's not the injury. It was excruciating for me. But like the quarterback that was signed by Florida, he comes back now, and going through that's what's allowed him to be a coach. So you have to know, not just that it's good for you, but there's something great for you in your future. God trusts you, and he's trusting that you'll get through this. But I never tried to do it by myself. So if you're not a believer and you're watching this, you can really benefit from having people in your circle that will build you up. I told my guys all the time, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. I think as adults, we need to remember that as well. I mean, I hate to say, when I turned 50, my circle shrank. I want people that want the best for me. And to me, that's the best way out of adversity is with my brothers.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Joby Martin, but he talks about his mat carriers. And you think about the Bible story of where you have the lame man, that he had four friends that grabbed him, carried him on top of the roof, cut a hole in the roof, and lowered him down to get to Jesus. And how often do we have mat carriers? The guest that's on the episode before this one, she talked about purpose partners. And I really liked the way that resonated, even more than mat carriers, in the sense that you need people that are there for your purpose and that are going to uplift you. And then she even went so far as, how often do you pray for those purpose partners to help you, to equip them to help you even more? And it goes back to what you had shared, is it's about them, not about you. And the more that you shift that over, the better. I like what you said about grounding yourself on something outside of the situation to help bring perspective. And nowadays, we lock our identity into what we do, and that's who we become. And I was guilty of that in the corporate world. I was who the title was on my business card. And that's so far away from who I am and who I wanted to be. But I'd lost that, and I was in that process of going through the challenges of getting a bigger title, going further along while helping people. It was still genuine to help people. I just got wrapped up in me. And once you lose that, then you're like, and I haven't been in the corporate world since 2022. I still battle with, well, who am I? And fortunately, the good Lord's been telling me is, well, one, you're a child, you're a son of God, so you're my son. And then the second is, you're a husband and a father. And so I would rather be known as those three things than any title on a business card.
Right. And sometimes we have to experience that personally. What's funny about Joby Martin is his sidekick there, Denny Thompson, played for me. And Denny's one of those guys, that he'd play for me when I was a young coach. Sometimes I think, oh my goodness, he was one of the beneficiaries of my 5 practice.
That's all. I love Built for More. Oh my goodness. And,
Yeah,
and
so
Denny's just got such a strong story, and to watch him grow through interviewing people and talking through people, it's wonderful.
And what people don't know about Denny is he's an amazing quarterback coach. I mean, he's got quarterbacks in the NFL he coached. He has had a business, but yeah, great show. I identify with those guys, and I'm in line with what they say and their mission for sure.
No, that's great. Well, Tim, I don't want to take up a ton of your time, but I'd like for you to dive into a little bit about the documentary, to explain to people when they might be able to see that, but then more importantly, what is the story about?
We moved to South Carolina. I was working with Emmanuel, and we joined a church up there called New Spring. And for some reason, I didn't go to small group one night, And my wife came home and said, "Hey, there's a guy in the small group that once has read it." I don't talk about. I introduce myself as a teacher now, former teacher, teach leadership, help businesses and executives, stop the churn. But I don't ever say I was a former coach because I don't want to. So after a few months, she came home and said, "Hey, there's a guy in our small group wants to do a documentary on your career." I said, "No, never. I'm not doing it. It's not what I'm going to do." Well, over about a week, she started working on me. She said, "Do you really?" But what it was for me is that, we never talked about football when my kids were little. And so there's a lot of stuff they don't remember or don't even know. And so I started thinking about it. This is going to be a good way for them to see my career through the eye of a camera. And so once we started it, I realized, this is really the best thing that I've ever done from that perspective, because these guys are pros. Their stuff's on streaming services. They're top notch. We've gone all over the place interviewing people, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and it'll be out in November. It's basically called Triumph, but it's really a thing to try to encourage and motivate, but at most inspire people. For me, becoming a football coach was a huge step of faith. And my favorite saying of all the hundreds of quotes I have is this: a step of faith always precedes the blessing. In our society, we've got that backwards. God asks us to give, God asks us to live, but you have to take a step of faith. And so I think the documentary does a good job of showing that, I did not have the pedigree. I just tried to do what was right in his eyes, and give an honest day's wage for an honest day's pay, and also leave it better than I found it, which is the motto of my company. And so, yes, it'll be out in November. I've seen the trailers. I know that the cinematography is fantastic, but the subject's not that great. But no, and there's just great footage in there of me being young. Good night.
It's a great way to reflect. And
Yeah,
and
right.
and again, you heard it in what you said. There's still that imposter syndrome that rears itself up when you're talking about that the subject matter might not be as great. And just think of the legacy that you're able to leave, not only your family, but all of your players, anybody who you touch, the coaches. And that's why I encourage people to write books, because once you put it on paper, it lives forever. Whether it's your children that get to see it or someone else's children, is you have a chance for your word to help. And, the guest before you, and sorry, I keep referring to it, but I just had a conversation with her, and this is really relatable, is that she does everything not for the 99%. She does everything for the 1%. It's the one young person that she can reach is why she does what she does. Where, like you said, the world has it backwards, is how do you hit the masses? And hopefully within the 99, you can find one where she's just like, I'm going to speak the truth of what God has told me to speak to, because I know there's one person that needs to hear it. And that's what this documentary is going to do.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. Obviously, don't feel worthy, but when the imposter came up when I started writing, it was completely different because I had so much ammunition. I said, "Look, imposter, there's 15 guys that became head coaches. The running back coach at the University of Georgia, this coach over here at this university, this high school coach over here." And I had this evidence, and so it's still there. I don't want people to think, well, if I do this, it's going to go away. It's not going to happen. Not if you struggle with that. But in me educating people, I have to educate people about what that is before they can really see it. I want to come alongside them. I want to help them in their organization. I want to come into your business, and we want to create a place where it's too good to leave because of the way you deal and handle with your subordinates. If you treat them as your team and you really encourage them. Now, I'm not saying people should go in and start helping people write their resumes like I did, because that's not the advice I'm saying. And I don't give advice anyway. I just say what I did. But when my focus changed, my heart changed. And that was an amazing time.
That's awesome. Well, Tim, what would you like to leave the audience with today?
I think the most important thing is this: it's not my book. So my book's about the 6 pivots. It's really about the quasi seventh pivot. And, have you truly made Jesus Christ the CEO of your life? That's the way I like to express it to unbelievers or people who have never heard it. We serve a risen Savior. And if Christianity or faith is brand new to you, it is at the core of everything I do. And you might not understand the Bible, but you know who your CEO is, and my advice is to seek out Christian people and decide who is going to be the CEO of your life so that you don't have to live with this unchristian imposter in your ear. That would be my last thing I would love to tell people.
That's wonderful, and I have nothing better to say or add to that. Tim, now how can people find and follow you?
At timcoakley.com. It's Cokeley, timcoakley.com. That's my website. They can go on there and request us to work with them. It's impossible to not find me on socials now that Amy's doing it.
Now that you have a social media manager. Hey, it takes a village. Like you said, surround yourself with the right people and things can happen.
You got it.
Well, Tim, thank you so much. I just want to say how much this was great for me. The timing of this was fantastic. I can't wait to dive into the book and really apply these things because I like to practice what I preach. And these are wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing everything.
Thank you. And it's great being on your show.
Yep. Thank you. Well, hang tight just for a minute. But ladies and gentlemen, Tim Coakley.